哇，你是 so good.
Can you read the Chinese?
Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's good. Okay, so maybe we get started if David might come a bit later.
Okay.
So just to give a general introduction, when we have we have a variety of different religions in the world, and they all have the aim of giving some guide to people's way of life, to helping people, to helping society, and so on. And if you situate Buddhism within them, well, you can divide religions into those that accept a creator God and those who don't. So, for example, Christians, they accept a God who created the world, and also Muslims and the Jewish faith as well. So there's those religions to one side, and then opposed to that you have religions that don't accept a creator God. So, for instance, Jainism, Buddhism, those kind of religions don't accept this omniscient God who created the world. And within those, the ones who don't accept the creator, you have ones who accept a self of persons and ones who don't. And Buddhism is the religion that doesn't accept a self. So Buddhism is kind of unique in that way. It's the religion that, first of all, doesn't accept a creator God, and secondly, doesn't accept a self of persons, like a creator, like a doer, experiencer that's somehow separate from the aggregates, from our body and mind. So that's how you kind of locate Buddhism in amongst a plethora, like a variety of different religions. And so related to that, generally when you accept a creator God, there's some kind of problem in terms of reasoning. So for instance, if you try and say that, okay, this God who created the world is all powerful and also has great compassion, well, then there's a problem there, because there's a problem of evil. You have a lot of suffering in the world, so you have this kind of difficulty, a contradiction that's difficult to resolve. And same thing when you talk about a self, when you're talking about a self of persons, you have the same kind of difficulty. If there's a separate experiencer, then how come if we get rid of the body and the mind, there's nothing left over? And you have all these things that are difficult to explain and difficult to resolve. So in that sense, Buddhism is well positioned. Buddhism has an advantage in that the tenets of Buddhism, the things that we accept as Buddhists, are let's say they have good reasonings, and they're relatively stable, and they withstand analysis. You can think about them and they become more and more clear. whereas perhaps with some of these other religions, it's more difficult, more you think about it, harder it is to justify, and you have to use faith a lot more. So, and like we were saying before, in Buddhism, we're not only allowed to reason and to question and to analyze, we're also encouraged to reason and think about the teachings and study them by the Buddha himself in the sutras. So, in this sense, Buddhism is quite special. When in other religions you might not be encouraged to question. You might say, okay, no, it stops there. There's a point where you just have to have faith. So in Buddhism, you can have something else. You can have faith through reasoning. So it's very, in a way, we're very lucky to be Buddhists. So we have this religion where we can think about things, and we have this vast array of different practices and that we can do. So we're lucky in that way. Now, today I just thought we'd talk a little bit about the Four Noble Truths. So got the slide there. Now this is quite an important topic. This just to give a general introduction to it. The Chinese on the right is from my dictionary, which is the Great Chinese Tibetan Dictionary. So I can't read Chinese, but I can read the Tibetan, and I put the English translation of the Tibetan on the left there. So the Four Noble Truths, the first point it says in the Tibetan and presumably the Chinese as well was they were taught by the Buddha at the time of the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. So in Buddhism you have 3 turnings of the wheel of the Dharma. So the first turning was teaching the Four Truths to what are called the happy group of 5 in Varanasi. So if you go to Varanasi, you can go to Deer Park, which is where the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths to a group of 5 disciples. That was the first turning of the wheel. And the second turning of the wheel is basically the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, the Prajnaparamita Sutras. And the third turning of the wheel is the in Tibetan it's called Dodi Gondrel, I've forgotten the Sanskrit, sorry. The sutra is called in English the Sutra Unraveling the Thought. So there's these 3 turnings of the wheel which we have, and the first turning of the wheel is when the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. So it was his first teaching. It's kind of a important teaching. And after that there are 2 cycles of cause and effect. So you have 4 truths, right? And the reason you have 4 truths is because you have 2 cycles, and with each cycle you have 2 of cause and effect. So for the 2 cycles there's 2, so 2 times 2 is 4. That's how you get the 4 truths. So you have a cause and effect related to cyclic existence, and a cause and effect relating to liberation. So, okay, cyclic existence means basically taking rebirth again and again uncontrollably, so under the power of afflictive emotions and karma. So it means, cyclic existence means basically the state of having to take uncontrolled rebirth again and again. So in Sanskrit the word is samsara, so that's what we mean when we talk about cyclic existence. When you have the cause and effect related to cyclic existence, well, it means like the cause of cyclic existence is what we are calling or the cause related to cyclic existence, is called the truth of the cause, the truth of the origin. So we're talking about afflictions, basically. So afflictions means things like anger and hatred and pride and so on. And the effect of that cause, so what comes from pride, anger and all that, is basically the truth of suffering, or true suffering. So it means basically it means a body that is a basis for experiencing suffering and is a cause for future suffering. So it means rebirth and cyclic existence, basically. So just to summarize there, you had cyclic existence and you had a cause and effect. The cause is the truth of the origin, and the effect is the truth of suffering. Basically, this is kind of a rough way of explaining it. Then you have and a cause and effect related to liberation. So liberation means being free from afflictive emotions and from actions, from karma. It means not having to take rebirth, not having to experience suffering. So for the cause and effect related to that, well, you have the path. The truth of the path is the cause related to liberation. So it means what causes liberation? Well, the truth of the path. By practicing the truth of the path and realizing it in your continuum, you attain liberation, you attain freedom from suffering. And then what's the effect of that path? What comes about from practicing path? Well, the truth of cessation. So cessation means stopping, right? Cessation means stopping. So means you stop suffering.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Just
Yeah.
look up the definition of liberation.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay, so liberation means freedom, yeah? Means freedom. So when you when you're free and you don't have to take rebirth under the power of actions and afflictive emotion, that's called liberation. So the cause of liberation is the truth of the path. Path means something that takes you somewhere. So like that, paths like direct realization of emptiness and so on, they take you to liberation, so they're called a path. So by practicing the path, we attain what's called a cessation. Cessation means stopping. So the truth of cessation is the effect of the truth of the path, basically. So that's the second point there. I think it should be in the Chinese as well. The first point is that it was taught by the Buddha at the first time of first tooling we have done. The second point is that there's two cycles of cause and effect, one related to cyclic existence and one related to liberation. And the next point that's there is they include all bases of cultivation and abandonment. So what does that mean? Well, it means that there's things that are basically, simply like it means there's things that are good and things that are bad, things that we should do and things that we shouldn't do. So the Four Truths is a division of those two put together. So within things that we should do and things we don't, or things that we shouldn't do, you have the Four Truths. That's like how that's like what you're dividing up when you divide the Four Truths. And now this last point is like explaining why they're called Noble Truths. So this is kind of important. So they're called Noble Truths or Truths for Nobles because for noble beings they are seen to be just so and unmistaken. So noble truth means truth for a noble. Noble means an Arya being, a being who's directly realized emptiness, basically. So it means great bodhisattvas, great arhats, and so on. So these great beings, they see these four truths as being how they are. They see them as being correct. Whereas normally ordinary people don't see them as true. So we don't see things being in the nature of suffering. We don't understand what the path is. We don't understand what the origin of suffering is, and so on. So this is why these four are called noble truths. It means truth for a noble, or truth for an Arya. So it's like what we were talking about last week. We said that an ultimate truth means a truth for an ultimate, where ultimate is a mind that is directly realizing emptiness. And likewise, truth, conventional truth means truth for a concealer, which is truth for a mind that is mistaken about emptiness, basically. So that's what we're talking about with the Four Noble Truths. Any questions there? No? Okay. Just see what I've got on the next one. So, okay, here we are. There's the Four Noble Truths, and we've got them all written out there. So we have true sufferings, true origination, true cessation, and true paths. So these two are the cycle related to cyclic existence. And these two are the cycle related to liberation. And with that you have one cause and one effect. So for that cycle you have one cause and one effect. Likewise for this cycle you have one effect and one cause. I got that wrong. This is an effect and this is a cause. This is an effect and this is a cause. So, hey, come on. Okay. So we're talking about the Four Noble Truths here. So the first one we got is true sufferings. So what does true sufferings mean? Well, first of all, like what it doesn't mean is that everything's bad. It doesn't mean we need to be pessimistic. It doesn't mean we need to punish ourselves or anything like that. It's not saying that when you have chocolate, it's not a nice experience. It's not saying that you can't have a partner or anything like that. It's not saying everything is bad and no good and you should get rid of it. Some people might think like that, but it's just kind of a relative way of understanding our predicament, our problem as human beings. So although temporarily we have all these nice experiences and so on, ultimately, or in the finality, they have to stop. They're not stable, and we can't rely on them. And that's something like what we mean by the truth of suffering. It means that that yes, we have good things in life and we can enjoy life and so on, but there's a limit to it. There's a it's not totally the end, totally how we might imagine it to be happiness. So that's what we're talking about with true sufferings. So within true sufferings, you have you have different divisions, but normally you talk about three types of suffering. So that makes it a bit more clear if we talk about those, I guess. Now, I guess in a way it's not nice to talk about suffering and so on. Like we kind of rather avoid it, but in the same time, if if we talk about it or if we don't talk about it, we still have to probably experience it. So in a way, it's better to be prepared and or to be realistic, and then we can deal with life better. So talking about three sufferings. First one is suffering of suffering. So you have three. You have suffering of suffering, suffering of change, and all pervasive suffering. The first one we talk about is called suffering of suffering. Now these are in this book here in the Great Treatise of the Stage of the Path of Enlightenment. So good book if you can read it, and it's on the section that has the three types of suffering. This is on page let's see, page 289. It's in this section here anyway, and the suffering of suffering just means like when we have experiences of pain, like if someone stabs us, or if we get a headache, or if we get sick, or we feel depressed or whatever, that's basically talking about the suffering of suffering. So it means feelings of unhappiness, whether they're related to the body or related to the mind. So those things are the suffering of suffering. So in the okay, so that gives you an idea of what we're talking about. It's not what we normally call suffering, what we normally call pain, and so on. And then the suffering of change, which is the second type of suffering, means it means contaminated pleasure. So it means our experiences of pleasure that are related to afflictive emotions, related to anger and attachment and pride and so on. So why are they called suffering of change? Well, basically because although they might be temporarily pleasurable and give us some temporary relief and so on, eventually they have to stop. They change into the other types of suffering. So that's why they're called changeable suffering. Now, it doesn't mean that they're bad or we have to give them up or anything like that. It just means that they're not something to put your ultimate hopes on. So it's relative when we're talking about suffering. Then finally, the one we have is all-pervasive suffering. All-pervasive suffering is basically neutral feelings. This is how it's talked about in the Lamrim, in the Great Stages of the Path. But it means that as long as we have contaminated feelings, as long as we have feelings that are associated with afflictions, with attachment, hatred, and ignorance, and so on, then we have to experience. We lack an ultimate happiness. We lack. We still have some kind of suffering. We lack this ultimate happiness. So that's what we're talking about with all-pervasive suffering. It's called all-pervasive suffering because it pervades, or it covers all of cyclic existence from hell, from the lowest hell, if you accept hell, to the highest states of concentration, the highest kind of rebirth you can have in cyclic existence, like rebirth as a deity or whatever. So all states of rebirth that we've taken under the power of afflictions and the power of attachment and so on, they lack this ultimate kind of happiness, is what it's saying.
So pretty much saying that the three suffering, if you put it in example wise, the first one obviously is like, when you get like, it's pretty clear. If you
Mhm.
get stabbed or get punched or whatever,
Yep.
then you feel the pain. That's the suffering.
Yep.
And the second one is the change of suffering is like, for example, food. When we are hungry,
Mhm.
food is good. We really like food.
Mhm.
But once we have enough and have too much, and then try to have some more again, and we become very sick of it. We end up throwing up. So it's not really good for you anymore. You tend to avoid that food that you initially crave for. So that's a change of suffering. And I guess the third one would be like attachment. For example, you attach to something, but then when you're separated from it, you have the sense of loss or sense of jealousy or something like that goes with it. So I guess that part, that kind of attachment experience at the lowest of hell and also at the highest of realm of rebirth. Would that be?
Yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about. Like there's different ways of explaining it. Like in the Lamrim, it has this way of explaining it in terms of contaminated feelings of suffering, contaminated feelings of pleasure, and contaminated neutral feelings. But in other texts, explains it a little bit differently. So yeah, it's good if you can. If you want to find out more about this, then it's really good to look at the this Lamrim text, the volume 1. It's on page 289. So it'll explain a little bit about the different types of suffering. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the truth of suffering, basically. And the second truth we have is true origination, or you might call it truth of the origin. So what is the cause of this lack of ultimate happiness? Well, the cause is, according to Buddhism, afflictive emotions and karma. Afflictive emotions and karma means action, so we'll say action for now. We'll go into that a bit more later, but now, what do we mean by afflictions? Well, here we got the Tibetan, Chinese, and English again. So this isn't the definition we normally use, but I put it here because it was in the dictionary. Affliction is a mental factor that disturbs the mental continuum through causing uneasiness of body and mind and inciting negative actions. So, we're defining an affliction. What's it mean by mental factor? Mental factor is basically a part of the mind with a very kind of specialized function. So within the mind you have kind of a main mind and what's called a mental factor. Mental factor is talking about the different parts of the mind with very specific functions. The main mind is talking about the bare knowing of the object. So, for instance, you when you know this book with say your eye consciousness, you at the same time the eye consciousness has a feeling. So like if it looks good, maybe a feeling of pleasure. If it looks bad, a feeling of displeasure. And also it has a discrimination. This discrimination means basically distinguishing this from this. So all these different functions of the eye consciousness, say when it looks at a book, those are called mental factors. So it's basically a specialized part of the mind. So an affliction is a mental factor that disturbs the mental continuum. So mental continuum means our minds, basically, our mind streams. So it means the afflictions, they disturb our mind. How do they disturb our mind? Well, through causing uneasiness of body and mind. So causing us to be tired or just making it hard for us to do things, in if we explain it in a simple way, and then through inciting negative actions. So because incite means to cause, to bring about. So afflictive emotions, they make us tired, and they make us they make our minds unserviceable and make it difficult for us to do things with our mind, and they cause negative actions. They cause us to say anger will cause us to kill, or to and attachment will cause us to steal, for instance. That's a kind of gross example. So that's what we mean by afflictions. So basically afflictions are what's causing us our lack of ultimate happiness. So any questions about that? Is the Chinese? Can you read the Chinese? Yeah, that's really good. Okay. All right. So afflictions. Now there's different divisions of the afflictions, but I just thought I'd go through the most basic division, which is called the 3 poisons. So the first one is called attachment. The first kind of affliction when we talk about the 3 poisons called attachment. What is attachment? It means the mind that is the disturbed mind that doesn't want to be separated from the object. So, like example in the text is when you have a cloth and you put oil in the cloth. Now the oil is very hard to separate from the cloth. It kind of gets stuck there. Likewise, attachment is getting stuck to things and not being able to move the mind from it. So it doesn't mean that we can't look after people close to us or anything like that. It just means that we can't having, and it doesn't mean we can't love our partners or love our families or whatever. It doesn't mean that. It's just saying that when we do so, we should be careful not to have this strong clinging and